Hello friends, welcome back. Myself Pushpender Singh, and we are going to start with our daily current affairs. So today you have 28th of June 2021, and these lectures are useful for those who are preparing for the civil services examination, which is conducted by the UPSC. Alright, and for that purpose, we are referring the two national newspapers, the Hindu and Indian Express. You must also study those newspapers for the preparation of the civil services examination. So let's begin with the lecture for the 20th June 2021. Okay, so first news is all about the reservation of all jobs for the residents of the Ladakh. So here what is happening is that the reservation of the jobs, it was one of the key demand, right, of specifically the people from the Ladakh. The Ladakh has in 2019 have become a union territory by reorganization of the Jammu and Kashmir, right? It was a key demand, specifically the people from the Ladakh, right? As well as the several political parties with the Ladakh Buddhist Association also, right? To reserve the jobs for the residents of this region only. Okay. So recently, the order which was issued by the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. R.K. Mathur, has stated that all jobs in the Union Territory of Ladakh will be reserved for the residents of the region only, right? And the Ladakh, as you know, it was separated or it was made a union territory after reorganization of the Jammu and Kashmir on the August 5, 2019. Okay, and it was one of the main demand, specifically from the Buddhist people. Okay, and though the Muslims also constitute the part of the Ladakh. For example, in Ladakh, you have the two districts. One is Leh and second is Kargil. In the Kargil, 46% population basically consisting of the Muslims. The Muslims are mainly concentrated in the Kargil. So this Kargil or the Muslim representative basically, first of all, opposed the Ladakh, right, when the Union Territory status was given, and now, right, and now they are also opposing for this, basically, reservation of the jobs for the local people specifically. But there was a huge demand, specifically the people from the Ladakh. Okay, now the new recruitment rules basically mention the clause 11 of the Union Territory of Ladakh Employment Subordinate Service Rules 2021. Okay, according to this, the new appointment or the no person shall be qualified to be appointed to the service unless the person is a resident of the Union Territory of Ladakh. That means, in order to appoint, right, in the Union Territory of Ladakh, you must be the resident of Ladakh for that matter. Okay, and this move was basically a long pending demand, specifically the people from the Ladakh, when the Ladakh was becoming a union territory on the August 5, 2019. Okay, the population of the Ladakh, as you know, the Ladakh basically consisting of the two districts, the Leh and Kargil. Right, in the Leh, the majority is basically the Buddhist people. In the Kargil, the majority is Muslim people, or the Kargil is Muslim dominated area, and the Leh is basically the Buddhist dominated area. Okay, and the last year Jammu and Kashmir introduced the domicile certificate, which was set an eligibility criteria for the appointment of any sort of a government services in that respect. Okay, you can see the Ladakh town in this picture. Okay. Next, the Prime Minister Awas Yojana Urban. So the Prime Minister Awas Yojana Urban was basically introduced as a flagship scheme, right? As a flagship scheme, or flagship mission of the government of India, which was implemented by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Okay. Now it was launched on 25th of June 2015. Right. What is the main purpose of this mission? This mission addressed basically the urban housing shortage among the economically backward, the people, right, as well as the middle income group, as well as the low income group categories. So here you will have the slum dwellers, right, so that they could get some sort of a pakka house, right, specifically, to all eligible urban household by the year of 2022. The year 2022 basically marks or the complete 75 years of our independence. So Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs basically have introduced this flagship program of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, right, in order to provide a pakka house to all eligible urban households by the year of 2020. That year marks basically the 75 or 75th years of our independence. So recently, the government of India also approved the 708 proposals for the construction of another 3.61 lakhs houses, right, under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. So combined, if you see till date since 2015, the total number of sanctioned houses under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban is now 112 lakh. Okay, and out of that, around 48 lakh houses have been completed or have been constructed so far. Okay, and it's a 100 days challenge. 100 day challenge means you have, the 100 day challenge was launched by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, right, for the expedient, the development of the Pakka houses specifically in the urban areas. And here the awards have been given to the outstanding performance, right, which was done by the urban bodies or which was done by the states, union territories, the local urban bodies, like in order to provide, the Pakka house or the successful implementation of certain provisions of the mission. Okay, so Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, it was a flagship program of the government of India, which was implemented, right, in 2015. So it was supposed to be implemented from 2015 to 2022, and by 15th of August 2022, right, it should give or it should construct at least the Pakka house to every eligible urban household, right? That marks the 75 years of completion of our independence. Okay. The most important feature with that Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban is that it will provide, various benefits, right, to the basically eligible urban people. For example, it will have the in situ rehabilitation of existing slum dwellers, right, using the land as a resource and with the help of the private participation. So in that, what happens is the slums, right? Whether these slums are on the central government land or the state government land or urban local bodies land or on the private land, right, should be taken up, right, for in situ redevelopment. In situ means wherever they are. For that purpose, these lands will be taken up for in situ development for providing the houses to all eligible urban slum dwellers which are residing on that particular land. Okay. Second is basically credit linked subsidy. Right here, the most important aspect is to expand the institutional credit, right? Institutional credit flow to the housing needs of the urban poor, right? So this will be done by implementing this credit linked subsidy component, right? And it's basically a demand side intervention, as you know. So here the interest subsidy will be credited upfront to the loan, right? Which is basically directly to the account of the beneficiaries through the primary lending institutions, which will ultimately, result into the reduced effective housing loan, and it will also reduce some sort of equity monthly installment. Also, ultimately, it will be beneficial to the loanee, right? And the third is basically affordable housing in the partnership. It's a very important, part here. The scheme of the housing, or a scheme of affordable housing in the partnership, basically aims to encourage some sort of a private partnership in the creation of the affordable housing, right? To stop recognizing and to recognize the efforts of the government that would be suffice to redress, or that would not be suffice to redress the housing shortage in our country. And the last and most important is subsidy for the beneficiary-led individual house construction enhancement. So here the most important thing is that the central government would provide a financial assistance of up to 1.5 lakh rupees to the beneficiaries belong to the economically weaker sections category, right, for either construction of the house or upgradation of their existing house. So per beneficiary, 1.5 lakh rupees will be provided, right? And here most important thing is that this beneficiary-led individual house construction announcement is one of the most important among these four components, right? These are the four components in the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, right? And through that, the government of India is planning to redress the housing shortage in the urban areas of our country. And the funding specifically with the credit linked subsidy component will be implemented as a central sector scheme. And the other, the other three components that we just now discussed will be implemented as a central sponsored scheme. Okay. And all statutory towns which are as per the census 2011, right, will be notified and will be eligible to be coverage under this mission. The towns which are also notified under census 2011 will also be covered under this mission. Okay. Next, you have the Sardar Sarovar Dam. As you know, the Sardar Sarovar Dam is located in Gujarat state. Okay, it is first time it is providing the irrigation water in the summer time, right? In the history of the Sardar Sarovar Dam. As you know that the Sardar Sarovar Dam was inaugurated by the Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi in 2017 only, right? So it's a most important dam. It's a lifeline of the Gujarat state. Okay, and it's basically a terminal dam which is built on the Narmada River at the Kevadia in the Gujarat's Narmada district. Okay, here according to the tribunal, right? According to the tribunal, so the four Indian states, right, which are basically also called the riparian states, they are Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan. These are the four riparian states of this basically, the waters from the Narmada River. So according to 1979, the award on the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal. Okay, this Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal basically awarded certain share of the water that should be distributed among these riparian states. For example, the Madhya Pradesh will get around 57% of the water, Maharashtra will get around 27%, okay, and Gujarat will get the 16% of the water, right? According to that, Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal award. And the Narmada River is basically considered as a lifeline of Gujarat. And usually, what happens is during the summertime there will not be enough water for irrigation, right? But this year, right, even during the peak summer, the dam has released around 1.3 million acre feet, that is MAF, water to the basically command area of around 21.29 lakh hectares of the land. So that means around 21.29 lakh hectares of the land have been irrigated by the water that has been released from the Sardar Sarovar Dam, right? And this is the first time in the history that the huge amount of water have been released from the Sardar Sarovar Dam. Okay. Now, here the most important aspect is that this Gurudeshwar Weir. This Gurudeshwar Weir is basically located around 12 kilometer downstream from the Narmada Dam. Okay, and this Gurudeshwar Weir, which is located around 12 kilometer downstream, help in maintaining the water level in the reservoir during the summertime. So this Gurudeshwar Weir is around 200 meters wide. It is around 200 meters wide, and it is around 32.7 meters height, right? So it's having the height of around 32.75 meters and it's around 200 meters wide. Okay, it can contain around 850 lakh square meter of water, right? That is basically released after the hydropower generation. So there you have the 6 turbines which is currently working, right, as a hydroelectric power generation in the basically in the Narmada River, right? So specifically after releasing of this water, this much amount of water basically can be released, right, over the period of the time. This water stored in the wire will also help in maintaining the water level specifically in the downstream, right? The total height of the wire is around 31.75 meter, right? And it is basically located at the Gurdeshwar, which is at the distance of around 9 kilometers from the Sandhu Bay Island and 12 kilometers downstream of Sardar Sarovar Dam. Okay, so here you can see the Sardar Sarovar Dam. Okay, next you have the Defense Industrial Corridor in India. So recently a webinar was organized on the India-Sweden Defense Industry Corporation. Okay, during that webinar, our Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, have invited the Swedish firms to invest in India specifically the newly set up two industrial corridor or newly set up two defense corridor. One is at Uttar Pradesh, second is at Tamil Nadu. Okay, the main purpose is basically, you know, to invite, specifically the Swedish investors, right? So this webinar on the India-Sweden Defense Industry Corporation was basically organized by the Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers. Ultimately, the main purpose is to support the growth of the defense sector and to enhance the manufacturing capacities in the sector and to also support the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So here the two defense industrial corridors have been set up, right? One is at Uttar Pradesh, second is at Tamil Nadu, which was subsequently being invested with the help of this type of cooperation. So for that matter, the India is basically a third largest. India is basically the third largest, the business partner of Sweden in that respect. Okay, and that is the most important thing. And it also, help in promotion of Make in India, because all such defense manufacturing capacities will ultimately, help in the promotion of the Make in India. And this defense industrial corridor will ultimately catalyze the industrial development of the defense and aerospace related items, which until now the India is basically dependent on the import. And this will definitely reduce our import and promote the export of these items from our country to the world. So here, the two defense industrial corridor have been identified. One is located at Uttar Pradesh, and the second is located at Tamil Nadu. In the Uttar Pradesh, this industrial corridor consisting of the 6 nodal points, right, which is basically connecting the Agra, Aligarh, Chitrakoot, Jhansi, Kanpur, and Lucknow. The Tamil Nadu Defense Corridor basically set up again, by the government of Tamil Nadu, which is consisting of the 5 nodal points, right? The primary nodal point is Chennai, then Coimbatore, Hosur, Salem, Tiruchirappalli, right? So these are some of the most important, the nodals or, the nodal centers or the nodal points around which the defense corridor will be set up. So you could see that the Tamil Nadu corridor as well as the Uttar Pradesh corridor, which will basically connecting these nodal points. Okay. Next, you have the India's first VSC based HVDC system. So Power Grid, which is a Maharatna company, have recently commissioned, right, the India's first voltage source converter, right, based high voltage direct current system, right. So here the most important aspect is that the Power Grid Corporation of India, which is in short also known as the Power Grid, which is a Maharatna PSU under the Ministry of Power, have recently commissioned, right, a monopole one of, the 2000 megawatt of the Palugur, Tamil Nadu, Thrissur voltage source converter based the high voltage direct current system, right? And here the most important thing is that this project basically strengthens the power systems, specifically in the southern region of our country. So it may be, you can also recall that the monopole second, right, of this project, which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the February 19th recently, right, with the commissioning of this monopole one, right, the project attains ultimately the full capacity with that respect. Okay, and this Palgur threshold, this system basically, consisting of around 5070 crore of investment. So it's basically also consisting of 6000 megawatt of HVDC system, which will ultimately enables the transfer of 2000 megawatt of the electricity to the Kerala through this HVDC station at Thrissur. So here the Monopole 2, which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the February 2021, right after commissioning of this Monopole 1 project, which was again the full capacity with that respect. So this state-of-art VSC technology that we are talking, okay, has been brought to India for the first time by the Power Grid Corporation of India. Okay, this VSC technology that we are talking, right, it significantly reduces the land requirement. Okay, so it is basically one of the important aspects that will reduce the land requirement, right? When you compare with the conventional HVDC systems that we have already in our country, and it is particularly suitable to those areas where the land is basically scarce, right, where the land is not available, right? It also facilitates the development of the smart grid, as well as it will also try to improve the resilience under various operating conditions. So it's a very unique feature of this project is that a combination of the overhead lines and underground cables, right? Both will be there to address the restricted, the availability of the transmission corridor specifically in Kerala. Okay. Next, you have the National Medicinal Plant Board. So here, the Ministry of Ayush released an ebook. That ebook consisting of the 20 medicinal plants for 2021, specifically in the backdrop of COVID-19 care. This ebook was basically prepared by the National Medicinal Plant Board. This National Medicinal Plant Board, which was established by the government of India, specifically you know for the promotion of the medicinal plant and to support the policies and the programs for the growth of the trade, export, conservation, and the cultivation of these medicinal plants in our country. And this National Medicinal Plant Board is basically, works under the Ministry of Ayush. The Ministry of Ayush means the Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. Okay. So now, this by releasing of this ebook, the 20 such medicinal plant will be conserved, right? Will be promoted, and ultimately, their trade, their export, their conservation will be regulated. So here, the MOU was signed between the National Medicinal Plant Board as well as the National Botanical Research Institute, which is located in Lucknow, right, for the boost in the cultivation of these medicinal plant. So this National Botanical Research Institute is basically a research institute of CSIR, that is Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. So it's a laboratory, or it's a basically institute under the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, which is located in Lucknow. It is basically engaged in the field of the taxonomy, right, and the modern biology. Okay. Now, let us understand about the National Medicinal Plant Board that just now I have explained you, that was set up by the government of India in 2000, right? And it is currently working under the Ministry of Ayush. Okay. Its main aim is to coordinate all matters related to the medicinal plants, and it will also support the policies and the programs for the purpose of the growth, export, conservation, and the cultivation of medicinal plants. The headquarters of the National Medicinal Plant Board is located at Delhi. Okay. Next, you have the e-content for the child with the disability, right? So here, the Union Education Minister have released the guidelines, okay, for the development of e-content for the children who is basically disabled, right? And such guidelines, right, which are basically prepared by the Department of School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education. So here, the guidelines which are developed as a part of the PM e-Vidya, which was launched in 2020. Okay, is a program which aimed at the development of the special e-content for the children with the disability. Okay, so according to these guidelines, which is released by the Union Education Minister, okay, this e-content of the children with disability should be developed based on the four principles, right? So this e-content should be based on the four principles. That is, the first is the perceivable, second is operable, the third is understandable, and the fourth is basically the robust. So it is based on these four important principles. And this e-content also include the text, tables, diagrams, visuals, audios, videos, etc. So that the children with a disability should be easily to understand, right? All those things. And they should comply with accessibility standards, which are related to the national standards as well as with the international standards. So definitely the aim is to unify all efforts which are related to the digital online education, specifically to the children with the disability. Okay. So this program basically emphasizes the development of special content for the Divyang or the children with the disability. Okay, it is the first time, the first attempt was made to prepare such guidelines for the children with disability, right? And which are referred the children with a special need, right? The goal is ultimately to have the inclusive education to all children's in our country. Okay. Next, you have the single-use plastics. So here, recently, the environmental minister basically announced, at the India Plastic Challenge Hackathon 2021, it was inaugurated. Okay, and the environmental minister basically, announced to spur the innovation and the entrepreneurship, specifically in tackling the plastic pollution in our country as well as in the world, and ultimately to eliminate the single-use plastic. Okay, and this the India Plastic Challenge and the Hackathon 2021, which was organized by the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. It's a unique competition which calls upon all the startups, entrepreneurs, as well as the students of the higher education institutions, right, to develop some of the innovative solutions for mitigate this plastic pollution, because such type of plastics are basically not good for the ecology, for the environment, and to develop the alternatives for this single use plastic. Right, now let us understand about the single use plastic. See, the single use plastics or these disposable plastics are basically used only once before they are thrown away or recycled, right? So these items are basically things like the plastic bags, the straws, the coffee stirrers, okay, the water bottles that you use, or the food packaging, the plastics. So we produce around 300 million tons of the plastic every year, and half of this is basically the disposable. Worldwide, only 10 to 15% of the plastics are basically recycled. Recycled. You can understand that. And the nature of the petroleum, which is based on this type of disposable plastic makers, is very, very difficult to recycle. And you know that these petroleum based plastics are not biodegradable and usually goes to the ultimately landfills all around your urban cities. You can look at it too, where it is just simply buried or get into the water, and ultimately it finds its way to the oceans, right? And those plastics, will not biodegrade, or they generally do not decompose into the natural substance like soil, but they, degrade or break down into teeny particles, small particles, after many years, even after thousands of the year. In the process of this breakdown, right, they also release some of the toxic chemicals, right, and they are ultimately making their way to the food chain or to the water supply. And now these toxic chemicals are ultimately found in our bloodstream also, right? And they also, known to disrupt our endocrine system also. And they are, recently medical research shows that such type of chemicals are causing the cancers, infertility, the birth defect, impaired immunity, and other ailment in the humans, right? So the Prime Minister Narendra Modi also gave the call to phase out the single-use plastics by 2022, right? And Government of India have already banned the import of the plastic waste in our country with that effect. And the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change have already brought out the Plastic Waste Management Rules 2016, right? Which basically deals with the handling of the plastic waste in the most efficient and environmentally sound manner. And recently, under these rules, plastic bags which are below than 50 microns have been totally banned. Okay, and the ministry have further issued a notification in the March 2021, right, for that amending of this plastic waste management rules with respect to completely prohibiting these 12 such single-use plastics, such as disposable plastics and cutlery, right, for the purpose of uses. Okay. Next, you have the LGBTQIA plus. What is that? The L means the lesbian, G means gay, B means bisexual, T means transgender, Q means queer, I means intersex. Okay, and A means asexual, and others. Right. So such LGBTQIA community. So here what happens is, in India, the Madras High Court basically came in the support of the LGBTQIA community. So empathizing, right, the unique needs of LGBTQIA community. The Madras High Court have directed the Union Ministry of Social Justice to enlist certain NGOs, right? These NGOs could provide these people that belongs to the LGBTQIA, right, the benefits like counseling, the monetary support, the legal assistance, the protection, right, specifically under the law, right? So certain other benefits will be provided with the help of these NGOs. Recently, the Madras High Court have directed the Ministry of Social Justice, right, to enlist such NGOs on the website within 8 weeks and revise such NGOs and such information periodically after that. Okay, and here any person who is facing any problem, right, any issue, right, whether it is related to the monetary issue, legal issue, the counseling issue, or any sort of a human rights related issue, right, they can basically approach to any of these enlisted NGOs for safeguarding their rights. Okay, and these NGOs would also coordinate with the police with respect to the offenses which are committed against such LGBTQIA community. And here, most important thing is that the appropriate changes should be made, right, as directed by the Madras High Court in the government short stay homes as well as in Anganwadi centers, the Garima Greh, which are also called the shelter home for the transgender persons, so that many such facilities will be provided to such LGBTQIA community persons. So, like the 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 facilities like accommodation, food, medical care facilities will be provided. Now, these government short stay homes, right? These government short stay homes are basically launched in 1969 by the government of India, right? The ultimate purpose of this government short stay home is to provide the temporary accommodation, right? The maintenance or some sort of a rehabilitated services to the women who are basically, suddenly rendered homeless due to some sort of a family issue, family discord, or family crime, right? In this government short stay homes, sometimes the women who have been forced into the prostitution or the homelessness or the sexually assaulted or the victims of any sort of a maladjustment can also be stay in the government short stay home. Currently in India, around 384 short stay homes are running in our country. These short stay homes also provide various types of services like counseling, medical care, psychiatric services, the occupational therapy and educational vocational services also will be provided, or training will be provided to the women, right, to that respect. Okay, along with that, some sort of a sensitization program will also be conducted to all stakeholders, right, including the police, the prison authorities, the judges, right, the physical and mental health professionals, right, the educational institutions, specifically to cater the needs of this LGBTQIA community members. So as I told you that LGBTQIA basically stand for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex and asexual, that is I and A. Okay. Next, you have Arun Jaitley Recreation Come the Sports Complex, right? So here, the Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh have asked the authorities of the Jammu and Kashmir, right, specifically to expedite the work of the Arun Jaitley multiplex complex. So here, the Jitendra Singh basically recalled when he has basically visited this place of basically the Harinagar in the Jammu, specifically for the purpose of meeting with some people. So here, the people of the Harinagar basically demanded, right, that a setting up of this such type of multiple complex or the sports complex, right? But what happens is the Arun Jaitley was basically passed away meanwhile, and the Dr. Jitendra Singh basically recalled that it was a dream of the Arun Jaitley as well as the people of the Harinagar that some complex or some grand complex should be built over there. So it's a vision of Arun Jaitley. This complex is also named after the Arun Jaitley, who was our Union Finance Minister also during the Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi's tenure. Okay, so it is going to be the 3 or 4 largest recreation centers or recreation cum sports centers which are already existed in our country. For example, one is at Ahmedabad, second Eden Garden, Kolkata. So it will be one among them. So it will be in the memory of late Arun Jaitley, who was known for the promotion of the youth talent in our country. Okay, the foundation stone for that purpose was already laid, right, as soon as the first death anniversary of Arun Jaitley was celebrated. Okay, And regarding Arun Jaitley, the Arun Jaitley was born in 1952. He died in 2019. Okay, he was an Indian politician and attorney. He was also the senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India. He was a member, or he was associated with the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is currently, the ruling party in our country. Okay, and Jaitley served the finance minister as well as the corporate affairs minister with the government of India from 2014 to 2019, right? And in his tenure, right, you have seen the goods and service tax, right? You have also seen the demonetization. You have also seen the merger of railway budget with the general budget, right? Previously, you have the railway budget and the general budget separately, but now this railway budget has been merged with the general budget. So there is only one budget right now, right? As well as the Jaitley also oversee the insolvency and bankruptcy code. Okay, he was subsequently awarded the Padam Vibhushan, which is the second highest civilian award posthumously. That means after death in 2020, because he has worked right in the field of the public affairs. And right in his memory, the Delhi's Firoz Shah Kotla Stadium has been named after him. So it has been named after the Arun Jaitley Stadium, right? As he has also contributed to the field of the sports. For example, he was the president of the Delhi and District Cricket Association, as well as he was also holding, the vice president of the board of control for the cricket in India, right? So, in its contribution to the field of the sport, the Delhi's Firoz Shah Kotla Stadium has been renamed as the Arun Jaitley Stadium for that purpose. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. We'll meet again tomorrow for our next current affairs. Thank you.